This is Professor Dareff's Science. Grouped data. An example of group data is a frequency distribution where your data, once sorted, are organized into classes. And then you count the number of items in each class or group and get the frequency. In this Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, the blue area where you enter the data gives the midpoint of each class, in this case 7 classes, indicated by a little x, and the frequency, the number of items in each class. We are then able to calculate a sample mean and a sample variance in sample standard deviation for this group data. This is a typical kind of a spreadsheet where the parts of the formula, which is more complicated here, are attempted in different columns, piece by piece, and built up. We'll follow this through and see how it works. Over in this left half, down here, the 50 is the sum of the frequencies. That would be the total number of items. The XF represents the product of a midpoint times the frequency. Nothing is shown in these rows here because we're only interested in the sum of them. And there is a Microsoft Excel function, sum product, that will do this for us. Sum product of the ranges for the cells here for the midpoints times the frequencies, the XFs. So we get all the products, all the XFs, and then they're summed together, and that is put down here into this cell, the 2089. For the sample mean, it takes that 2089, the sum of the products, and divides by the total number of items to get the answer here. Next to it, there's a rounded version of the cell, because typically, since your original data only has precision to tenths, your answer should not have precision any higher than your original data. So this spreadsheet allows it to come back to what you received as your input. On the right side, the first column here takes the x values minus the x bar that was just calculated down here. So until you enter this data in this spreadsheet, these cells over here are not going to have values because they have formulas that need this value down here, which is dependent on these values over here. So x minus x bar in this column. The next column goes the next step and squares what's in this column. And then the next column takes that and multiplies it by the frequency, but it's interested only in the sum of those products. So we don't show every single one, just down here, we get the sum of products of F2 through F8, which is this column here, times the frequencies, and that is represented by this header up here, tells us what's down here. For the sample variance, the formula is this G9 that we just looked at here, the sum of products, divided by the number of items minus 1. That's what B9 minus 1 represents, the number of items n minus 1. That gives us our sample variance. And again, there's rounding here to make it not be more precise than your original data, midpoints. And then, of course, to get this sample standard deviation, you simply take the square root of the sample variance, and again, rounding for that. If your data has fewer or more data items, more classes, fewer classes, you would have to adjust this spreadsheet appropriately and make sure that your different formulas that have the ranges would be adjusted as well.